Hi guys, Russ Philpott here with New Day Therapy, and I just wanted to have a live video and talk to you a little bit about anxiety. And recently I've had multiple people come in and express some frustrations with why am I feeling as anxious as I am, especially if they had already started therapy and they were getting a handle on things and they were getting onto a better path. So one of the frustrations was, okay, I'm doing better and I'm having less overall anxiety, but then at different random times it seemed to come up and it would spike, there wasn't a context for it that made sense there. And so sometimes people were telling me, they're like, what, I don't understand why I'm having anxiety, and I'm just trying to push it away and focus on something else. Which is a great short-term strategy for anxiety. And I always give the example of if your anxiety is coming and getting really high for you at that moment, then if anxiety is coming and saying, hey, watch out, your house is on fire, and you sniff and you look around and you don't smell anything burning, you don't see any smoke, you don't see anything burning, but the anxiety is telling you, hey, there's a real problem here. But then it's like, wait a second, anxiety, go away, because that doesn't match anything that's going on here. And so I want to talk about the role of anxiety, because anxiety is a normal human emotion, and there's no way that we can get rid of it. In fact, there are times when we try to get rid of it, and it's sort of like standing in the current of a big river and putting your arms out and hoping to stop the stream or the flow of that. And while you might be temporarily successful in stopping some of it, obviously we're not designed to stop the flow of a river. It takes me back to when I was a kid and I would go and I would play in a creek, and there would be a shallow creek, so we'd get rocks, me and my friends, and we would stack them up and we would stop the flow of the river or the creek. But as more water would come, it would fill up, and eventually it would go through or over or around. And so we would work really hard to stop that. But again, we were fighting a losing battle there. So I compare emotions to a stream that has a current like that. And so as the emotions are meant to flow, and they're meant to have a current that keeps going. And so we can fight it, but we're going to lose the battle. Again, directing yourself in a different direction while the anxiety is happening is a good temporary solution, but it's not going to have the good long-term effectiveness. So continuing to try to dismiss or to shove it or to stuff it is only going to, if we think about it, if we keep stuffing emotions, and that's our strategy, that can work for a while, but then it stacks and it stacks and it stacks, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're only meant to be able to hold so much of those emotions before eventually it's going to start squeezing out, or like that stream where I'm stacking the rocks, it's going to squeeze through the cracks, or it's going to go around, and anxiety is going to come out at times that aren't real convenient. Now, if we get into a place where we're doing that consistently, then it's sort of like squeezing putty in our hands, and it's like it'll just start coming out at different random kind of places, and it's really hard to predict. Now, but even if you are managing anxiety better, there are times when we have to prepare ourselves that it could just kind of pop up, and it's usually tied to something in our environment or our context, or trigger something from the past, which that can happen. We may not always be aware of what's happening and what triggers that in that moment, but there usually is some kind of causation to that, although you may not be aware of that again at that moment. So one of the things that I've been recommending to people is to get to know your anxiety. And if you have always shoved it to the side, this would be like inviting it in to have a relationship and to have a discussion with your anxiety. So the anxiety comes and it's waving its arms and saying, danger, get out, your house is on fire. And you start sniffing, you look around and you see clearly that the house isn't on fire. Then we can say, anxiety, thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. Because if my house were on fire, I appreciate you giving me the heads up and saying, hey, I better get my butt out of here before really, really bad things happen. But sometimes we have to say, too, thank you for bringing that to my attention, but I want to say, I checked it out. I checked out the environment. And yes, fire safety is very important, so I do want to prepare my home and my family for those kinds of things. But right now, anxiety, the house is not on fire and we're actually safe. So I think we need to recalibrate a little bit. We need to have ongoing discussions so that we can figure out how to communicate with each other in a way that makes sense to what's happening in the situation. Now, a lot of times with anxiety and people that I'm working with, they are able to anticipate that bad things are going to happen in life, or that certain parts of life can be extremely challenging. So at those times, it's like we want to be able to prepare for this next part of our journey and whatever that consists of. And sometimes the next part of our journey is sort of like climbing Mount Everest. And so we don't want to go in our flip-flops and our bathing suit if we're going to climb Mount Everest. So by anticipating it, we can start to say, what do I need so that I can be successful as possible for this next part of the journey? So then you think about climbing, then you would say, well, I need my backpack, and I need provisions, and I need the shoes with the spikes on them, and I need the safety ropes, and the carabiners, and the little hammer, and I need a good crew of people that know how the right paths, and the experienced climbers that can help me go along for this next part of the journey. All of that is really, really important to anticipate things that are happening in the future. One of the other things that happens for people I'm working with, and maybe occasionally, maybe once or twice for me, if you know me well enough, that's sarcasm, that happens to me a lot, is that we go beyond the proper preparations and then we go into over preparing. So when we get into that place, it's I've done all the proper preparations, now I'm overthinking the situation. And at that point, whatever efforts that I put into something that's beyond proper preparation is over preparation, is going to drain my energy levels in my gas tank unnecessarily, and it's not going to better prepare me for this next stage of the journey. This is really hard because in my mind, when I pull back from over preparing, when I realize that I'm there and there's nothing I can do to affect that far in advance, I compare it to taking a spacewalk without a tether. And we can get lost in the world of possibilities that are out there. If this could happen, then I know this could happen. If that could happen, then I know this can happen. If this could happen, then this could happen. And it goes on and on and on. And again, it can be exhausting. So at those times, we have to say, okay, if I can recognize that I'm over preparing for something, how do I draw myself back? How do I tether myself to the present moment? And so I want you guys to think about ways that you can do that you can anchor yourself. And it's either with your own thoughts, it's with reminders. For some people, it might be exercise. And then also people, who would be good people if you couldn't pull yourself back, if you could tug on that line or send up a signal for them to be able to see where they can help to pull you back in when you're too far out. So when we get back into that place, then it's like, okay, I'm in the present moment, and I'm not over preparing, I'm not wearing myself out. Now, the other thing that happens is, and this is the difficult part, I am pulling myself back from overthinking into the present moment, but my brain might start screaming at me, "You dummy, don't be an idiot. If you're not preparing for something, something's going to come and body slam you." And so it's like your brain will start to get anxious because it's not over preparing. Take heart that if you keep doing that and you keep working it and you keep working on bringing yourself into the present moment, you can also know that you can have a standby mode in your brain that says, I'm going to be aware of if there's new things or new information that I need to incorporate that's going to help me be better prepared. But if not, I got to get back into the present moment. And I've been reading a book by Brené Brown, who does a lot of research on vulnerability and shame and guilt and other anxiety kind of emotions. And in her book called Dare to Lead, she talks about that, and I have to look back to see the percentage, but so many of us were in a present moment where there's something that's enjoyable that's going on. And instead of really staying present, our mind goes, wait a second, I know that bad things are going to happen, so I need to start preparing for that. So we step out of the present moment, which is enjoyable, to go and to borrow more anxiety. If you're properly preparing for something, please do it. There's a time and place for that. If you're over preparing or fretting or taking that spacewalk without a tether, then we're missing out on, she says, we're missing out on a really crucial time, because the more that we can enjoy that moment, the more that we refill our gas tank. We refill our resources that's going to better prepare us for when times predictably get harder in the future. And I recognize that I do that a lot. And it was reassuring that she was saying, I think it was 80 or 90% of the population does that, where we shortcut those enjoyable moments for the anxiety that we think is necessary at that moment to be prepared. So get to know your anxiety. When it comes and it starts knocking on the door, it's trying to protect you. Our anxiety, the role of our anxiety is to protect us. So it's going to say, hey, there's something that needs your attention. But then we have to have a conversation with the anxiety to say, is this an immediate thing? The house is on fire. I got to get out. Train. I got to get out now. Or it's saying, if this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, then something could be really bad, which may need your attention, but it may not need it right at this moment. So there we have the conversation with our anxiety. Invite it in. I know we work so hard to push it away, but if we invite it in, then we can help to recalibrate it in our brain and to have that conversation that we're going to get better at knowing how anxiety speaks to us. And we'll be able to better discern if it's saying, hey, just want to give you a quick reminder, or get out now. So that's anxiety, and it's a different kind of concept to want to invite it in and to communicate more with it. But it's really vital, and anxiety is not going away anytime soon, and we don't want it to. It's giving us good, vital information that's going to help us be better prepared for the future, or better protect ourselves and our loved ones. All right, so that's anxiety. Let me know if you guys have any questions or if you have ideas for future topics. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great day.